Okay, so for my next speaker, it is my pleasure to introduce Professor Domingos Fernandes, who took his PhD in educational curriculum and instruction at the University of Texas. He's currently a tenured professor at the Institute of Education of the University of Lisbon. He's also principal investigator and coordinator of several research and evaluation projects, both at the national and international level. And he's an author of more than 100 papers, reviews, books, and so on. They are focused on a variety of educational matters and with a particular focus on educational evaluation. So today he's going to talk about the educational system as a whole and why he feels there's a need to reinvent it. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a privilege. I really enjoy to be here with you, trying to share some ideas. The time doesn't allow me to go very far, but I will try to point out some of the things that concern me and concern my research team, our research team at my university. Of course, that when we are talking about education, we are talking about a knowledge domain that is really very different from neuroscience, as Paul has stated before, because both our research traditions and the epistemology and also the disciplines that actually we use in education, we make use of in education, are quite different. Education is deeply rooted in social sciences. We deal with sociology issues, psychology, anthropology. We use ethnographies and stuff like that. And we, of course, have to pay very close attention to social type of issues, particularly inside the classroom. And the classrooms are really very complex environments, and we need to take care about that, and we need to take a look at the classrooms in a different way. We need to take to look at classrooms in a more holistic way. In a way, I would say that we should develop our investigation, our research in education, with a focus on that complex environment, which is the classroom as a whole. Well, these are some general ideas that while Paul was giving his talk, I was thinking about and reflecting about how really can we make this interaction and this desirable approach between different disciplines, even they at the first sight look so different, you know. That's really a challenge, and that's why, to be honest, I decided to accept this challenge, and I said to a good friend of mine that I have no age for these things anymore, because I'm getting too old, maybe, I don't know, but I didn't resist to take this opportunity to come up with some reflection with you and some interaction with the neuroscientists. Anyway, giving this talk, I cannot forget that I'm Portuguese and that I live in a certain environment, and in a way I'm influenced by that environment, by the conditions of my country, by the context where I live. And the title that I have chosen to this talk is more like something that I would like to state. I think, and I've been talking about this for several years, I think that schools are pretty much the same as they were many, many years ago. We had a study, a very large study, developed by John Goodlad in 1984. The book was reprinted 20 years later, so in 2004. And Goodlad, one of the main findings of Goodlad, and it was very interesting, is that schools, they are different. We say, well, schools are like people, they all differ one from each other. But Goodlad identified a lot of things in which schools are pretty much the same, and they didn't change. They don't change for many, many years. And we could talk about time organization, space organization, people's roles or students' roles, teachers' roles are pretty much the same. So that's why I keep telling that we make a lot of research, we come up with some results, and we make statements that we need to change this and we need to change that, teachers should do this or students should do that, but schools remain exactly the same. The organization of the school is pretty much the same. The teachers, the math teachers goes to the math classroom, the Portuguese teacher to the Portuguese class, and so forth. The knowledge is spread out, is seen as something discrete. We don't integrate. We do very little about that. And that's why I think that we need to try to reinvent schools, and we have some research evidence that show that we can do it because we have examples. And today we will have an example of a school that works in a different way, and students learn, and there are rules that they follow and that they are negotiated between teachers and students helping students, and so forth. I'm not going to talk by them, of course. But that's is an example. And we also have research evidence that clearly demonstrates that students within the classroom settings learn a lot more, and more than that, they learn with significance, learn profoundly, with deepness, if I may say so, if certain type of tasks are presented to them, if they are challenged with certain type of tasks, if the social interaction is of a certain type. This means if the teacher, for example, provides feedback in a systematic way and a regular way, if they have a role in the classroom, if the feedback is distributed by all the students, and if the tasks are challenging enough for them to develop one of the things that I think that it's the most crucial thing in the development of the system, which has to do with developing higher order thinking. I think that never before schools, systems, educational systems need to face this challenge of educating children and youngsters, educating higher order thinking skills of youngsters and children. And this can be done, and research is there to show us that can be done since the very beginning of schooling. We should present students with non-routine tasks, with tasks that can challenge them. We should provide students with opportunities to visit, for example, a factory or visit some kind of structure in our society and see what science is there, what kind of social science is there, what technology is there, what kind of social problems are there. So we need to look in a more integrated way to the problem that I think brings us all today to this room, to this auditorium, which is bringing learning, bringing knowledge back in, as Michael Young says. a sociologist of knowledge, that clearly underlines this idea, which I think that it's a very nice idea, bringing knowledge back in. We need to concentrate schools on the most important job that they have to do, which is to concentrate on learning of power knowledge, the knowledge that we all need as human beings to interact, to be integrated in society. Well, as it happens to me many times, I have a set of slides to show to you, and I started to talk. I'm sorry, I'm not, I don't know how neuroscience will analyze this type of behavior, but anyway, I hope that it's not too bad. And I have 5 minutes. Well, 5 minutes, as I usually say to my students, it's almost an eternity. In 5 minutes, we can do a lot of things. Let me show you very quickly some facts about Portuguese. I'm Portuguese, and some facts about Portuguese education. These are the 4 levels or cycles that our education is organized according to grades 1 through 4, first cycle, 5, 6, second cycle, 7, 9, third cycle, and 10 to 12 secondary education. Look at our schooling, the actual schooling rates in this country. Look, for example, 50 years ago. I was born 50 years ago, but I don't know if I remember that figure. But the figure, for example, for secondary education was 1.3. 1.3 50 years ago. We have 80% of the students in grades 1 through 4, so-called primary education, and so forth. 10 years later, in secondary education, we have 4.3. When democracy arrived to this country in 1974, we had 4.9. 4.9. Okay? Then, well, I'm not going to be exhaustive in looking at the table, but we made a lot of progress, of course. And this was extremely difficult to do. And we spend money, of course. And now we have the Troika here, because we spend the money trying to educate our children. And we still have a long way to go, because right now, compulsory education in Portugal is 12 years, and we still only have 72% of students, 72.5% in secondary education. Another interesting figure is this one. We spend a lot of money, of course, but I hope that this was well spent, you know. For example, in 2002, we have almost 80,000 computers in schools, 51% linked to the internet. 3 years ago, we had almost 700,000, and 90% or almost 91% of the computers were linked to the internet. I hope that this will make a difference in Portuguese education, in Portuguese preparation of our students for the future. Enrollments in higher education. I'm not going to comment because I have very little time to go. The expenditure in the late 90s and early this century, we really have about 5% of the gross domestic product invested in education. This was money spent in education, new schools. And so, because we were very far behind, when we had 1.3 students in in secondary education, in many countries in Europe and abroad, in the States, they have mass education at those levels. This is very important to understand. One thing that I think that it's important, and I would like to underline 3 or more minutes, and I'll be done. I use this slide for a couple of times. a couple of years, just to show what I'm interested in. And also to show how complex learning environments are within the classrooms, you know? Because as I commented to some colleagues before, I'm interested in what's going on in the classrooms. I mean, what can we do in order for students to learn in the classrooms? Because we know in a country like Portugal, for example, that if they don't have the opportunity to learn the power knowledge, as Michael Young usually says, if they don't do it, if they don't have the opportunity to learn it in school, and particularly in the classroom or in a learning room, I like this word, this phrase a lot, learning room, they don't have the opportunity to do it anymore. He said, stop. And I have to stop. I hope that I could at least underline some things, but let me finish with this slide and I'll be gone. We have this challenge in our educational systems. We have always a two-side mandate, ensuring equity and equal opportunities for all the students and for each one of them, like André talked about that, Gonçalo, I guess, and other students like Gonçalo. And we need to ensure that all the students have the opportunity to develop their higher order of thinking. And the question is, can we do a better job that we are doing right now? And I think that the answer is yes, we certainly can. And now I would start my talk. We started, but I stopped. We certainly can. And of course, we have different levels that we need to tackle. Political level, research level, training level, society, school, and classroom. Of course, that I would spend more 10 minutes, but I have to stop. Thank you very much, and I'll be delighted to answer to your questions if you have. Epá, isto é uma verdade.